Hello, I'm Steve McAllister, and this is the Gaming News Canada show presented by Bede Gaming. At the end of last month, Ontario licensed operator PointsBet Canada announced, through a collaboration with the presenting sponsor of this podcast and the Gaming News Canada newsletter, the launch of a new casino aggregation and bonusing platform. The new solution delivered by Bede has been integrated into the live PointsBet player environment to enable a growing library of new and engaging content for its customers. The open API platform also provides PointsBet with access to a rather robust casino catalog that includes Games Global, Pragmatic Play, Play and Go, Light and Wonder, and others. For more on Bede's latest Canadian partnership, we welcome back to the show Chief Executive Officer Colin Cole-Johnson, and we say greetings and salutations once again to the CEO of PointsBet Canada and Chair of the Board of Directors for the Canadian Gaming Association, Scotty Vanderwel. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for joining me again.
Hi, Steve.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, Colin, before we get into your latest partnership, I'm a little surprised that you aren't wearing a Canadian Gaming Association hoodie or ball cap, given the company recently joined the CGA. And Scotty, I have to assume the merchandise is still in the mail?
Yeah, it's still in the design phase, Steve. So we just got to get through that, and then we'll have Colin all dressed up pretty quick.
Well, Colin, we'll see. I'll maybe lean on Amanda Brewer and Paul Burns a little bit, and we'll try to make that happen for the Canadian, the SBC Summit Canada next week.
Brilliant. I'll be there next week, Steve. So yeah, happy to collect whatever's ready. Otherwise, you might catch me in Bede and PointsBet outfit, which would be equally good, I'm sure.
Hey, Colin, I'm going to start with you. Just maybe, if you don't mind, just summarizing the new partnership announcement. And again, this is Working Ontario is certainly familiar territory for Bede Gaming.
Yes, Steve, you gave it a really good intro at the top, really. What would I say? Ontario is a really competitive market. The importance of having a strong casino product and roadmap is as important as ever. We've obviously been live in the market since just before the regulated market opened, live with OG in that time. So we've got a really competitive product in that space. We've been working in close collaboration with Scotty's team now for some months, and the fruition came to go live very, very recently. So yeah, we're pleased to be in the market with another operator of the sort of level of PointsBet. It's really strong for Bede.
Scotty, I mentioned that those other partners you have in terms of the catalog of online casino, and it's funny, when I was doing some research for this podcast, I think it's almost 2.5 years now since you brought on Brooke Hilton as your head of iCasino at PointsBet, and so I just have to assume that this latest initiative with Bede Gaming, this is just a continual growth of your iGaming product.
100%. It's clear to anybody following the Ontario or Canadian market the importance of the iCasino category. We have our roots more strongly anchored in the sportsbook side of the marketplace, and so for us, it's been a journey towards the casino opportunity in the marketplace for a number of years. A couple of years ago, as you properly highlight, Steve, we brought Brooke across for her leadership in this category. She's done a great job of stewarding us towards stronger and stronger solutions for our customers. And ultimately, as I'm sure we'll get into, we went through a selection process that landed us in the relationship we have today and the partnership we have today with Bede, which we think sets ourselves up really, really well for being able to compete in this category more actively.
It's great. Maybe we'll just continue that thought too, just in terms of that of Bede being selected for this business. And what was it? What were the unique features that made your decision an easy one to bring Bede on board?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So we went through a pretty comprehensive review, invited a number of all the leading names to the table, and it's one of the nice things is there are great suppliers in this category. What Bede brought to the table was two, maybe three things that I'd want to highlight. First is a completely rock solid technology platform. Their history in working with OLG, the reliability of their platform, their network operations center, their stance towards site uptime and quality and those aspects really distinguish themselves. Secondly, Bede's been actively operating for 5.5 years or so in the Ontario market with one of the most demanding customers in the marketplace. So their product and their ways of working embed in it the kind of regulatory and compliance standards that we all need to hold ourselves to. And so that was kind of something we got and continue to learn from their experience in this area, in this category. And then the final thing is we just really like them as people. We've immediately we're speaking the same language. PointsBet's a mid-tier operator, and our culture is a really, really important part of distinguish ourselves. So finding someone that from a cultural fit seemed to line up so cleanly has just been a real blessing. And so, we've been talking now for 14 months, working very, very diligently on this launch for over 7. 2 weeks ago, or roughly 2 weeks ago, we brought the product to marketplace, and I view this not as the finish line, but really as a starting line for where we'll go from here.
Hey, Colin, I'll maybe just get your spin on too. Scotty alluded to it. I mean, obviously, you've been working with OLG in the Ontario market for quite a while now. I just wonder, if this relationship, if it's different at all, but just the fact that you get to work with an operator like PointsBet.
Yeah, I mean, back to the selection process, it's really important for Bede to feel like we're working with a partner who shares the same values and the same outlook as we do. And some of the things that Bede has always sort of cherished since we were founded is the belief around sort of operating in a regulated fashion, being a responsible operator, taking safer gambling really seriously, and just in the way that we feel that we work with Scotty and his team. And I should say, as across different time zones, we've got teams based, all around the world, not just in Canada and the UK. Those teams came together like really well, and that was through the process of presenting ourselves to PointsBet when PointsBet were going through a selection process, as well as what we found through the project to actually implement the solution, which is a solution that's part of Bede's full solution. So it looks at Bede's product from a casino aggregation perspective, as you mentioned. It also leverages our engagement tools that both come from those third parties and some of what sits within our platform. And that that's not a straightforward process, and requires diligence and hard work on the account of all the teams. And it's been a brilliant experience working through that with Scotty and the team, and now I've been live for a bit. We're looking forward to what we do next. So from a Bede point of view, we're well known obviously in Ontario now through what we do with OLG. We're looking across at Alberta opening, and finding partners that we can work with in multiple markets is also really valuable for us. And we look forward to doing that in the near future when that market opens.
Both of you gentlemen, like when we've spoken either on this podcast or Scotty, you and I bumping into each other at conferences in the past and other environments, I think we both have shared some thoughts on culture and that. Colin, I know it's something we've spoken about when we've had you on the podcast earlier this year, but I just wonder, Scotty, like how is culture relevant when you're talking about a partnership like this? And Colin mentioned working across time zones and the people in both companies. Like where does culture kind of fit into that kind of a role when you're trying to collaborate on a new product?
Yeah, what I would say is at the end of the day, businesses are just like constellations of people trying to do the right thing and trying to work in a productive way. And so we have a way of speaking about our culture or speaking about our values inside of PointsBet. We believe it, for us, we believe we need to own it, we need to solve it, we need to be it, we need to take control of our opportunity in front of us. So finding someone that can kind of rise to that sort of grittiness, that desire to kind of work towards a solution with a certain element of relentlessness is pretty important. There's no one in the PointsBet apparatus, whether they're in Canada or part of the broader global team, that really thinks about their job on a 9-to-5 basis. We think about our job on the basis of outcomes. And what we're seeking at any given point in time is the best possible outcome we can with the tools at our disposal. And so for us, finding a partner that can kind of match that isn't a slam dunk necessarily, right? So to Colin's credit and his team's credit, they were taking calls with our team in India late into the evenings. They were on calls with Canada, and Australia, and we were coordinating across time zones in a very dynamic way, which demanded that Colin's team be very, very flexible in terms of when they were willing to spend time with the various different resources across PointsBet. That wouldn't happen unless there was something anchoring the culture. It wouldn't happen unless both teams were sort of had their eye on the prize and were relentless in their pursuit of that. And that's absolutely what we saw through the process over the last months.
Yeah, Colin?
Sorry, I'll just agree with that, Steve. Scotty's put it very eloquently. I've worked on many implementation projects, probably never one actually that spanned the globe in the way that this one has done due to the distributed nature of the teams. You can't take that for granted. Scotty mentioned Bede having a 24/7 network operations center, which we do, which serves clients on a sort of live basis. So we're used to that. But when you talk about the different disciplines involved in delivering a project like this, you have the rest of the team involved. So that's everything from sort of program management, product management, engineering, both from a product and platform point of view. You even include people who work on the finance side of things. So the organisation has to pivot and embrace the way that your customer would need to operate to deliver something of this scale. And I thank my team while we're on here. Did a brilliant job at embracing that. And Scotty's team are great to work with. So it's a good fit all round, and it doesn't just happen. You work hard to nurture those behaviours and cultures within the organisation, and then when you come to a partnership like this, it works. But there's a lot of work goes into it underneath.
Is your iGaming platform ready for market expansion? Bede Gaming is ready to support your needs across jurisdictions with the SOC 2 compliant platform, scalable multi-tenant infrastructure, and unlimited configurability. Book a meeting with Bede's team at the upcoming SBC Summit in Toronto and future-proof your growth plan. Hey, Scotty, this next one's for you. You mentioned it earlier, but we know in Ontario with almost 50 operators that online gaming is accounting for about 85% of the handle, and so obviously a lot of competition around iGaming when it comes to those operators plus OLG in Ontario. Like, what is it that allows you to not only, I guess, keep up with the Joneses, but how do you buy a nicer house than the Joneses, for lack of a better way of putting it?
So our casino business is measured against the market opportunity is about half as successful as our sportsbook business to date, right? So we have about half as much market share there as we have on the sportsbook side. But despite that, it's our biggest business from a revenue perspective. So there's no debate around to PointsBet how important this is as a growth driver for us going forward. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second is that being competitive in the casino space is a journey towards a destination that keeps kind of moving towards the horizon, right? And so the question for us at PointsBet is that we recognize that we're not starting the race in the exact same spot as everybody else. We don't have the legacy and the history on the casino side that some of our competitors do. So our job is to figure out how it is that we can run faster relative to the opportunity than others. And for the last number of years, we've been making a number of improvements to our casino product, which have benefited our customers. We've expanded our content, most notably, almost sevenfold in the last couple of years. At this point, we have over 2,000 games that customers can play across a wide number of providers. But despite that progress, we were still not offering all the content that we knew was in demand in the marketplace. And so this, right out of the gate, this opportunity with Bede puts us the next step forward on that content journey. But content, in some ways is just having the product on the shelves. What really matters is that you can surround that content with a player experience and a loyalty strategy and an engagement set of mechanisms that make our site exciting to play and exciting to be on. We have a bit of an advantage versus some of our competitors in that we have a world-class sports product that can be part of our overall customer experience, but we need to make sure that our casino experience matches that. And the pathway with Bede from where we are to where we aspire to be will go a lot quicker than the journey that we've been on to date. And so we have the opportunity in front of us to start to accelerate the pace at which we're running towards the horizon. From my perspective, that's the kind of the job in front of us.
That player experience piece, Scotty, I mean, I wonder, especially in PointsBet's case, if it's evolved a bit. And again, as someone who doesn't play a lot of online casino, a partnership with Bede, does it make just for, is it more attractive now for one of your customers, let's say if there's a Montreal Buffalo playoff game on a Sunday night, that they're placing a few bets around that game, but at the same time, maybe they're betting live during the game, but they've also got a bit of a break and they might want to play online slots, and they might want to play online casino for a few minutes. Has there been an evolution of the PointsBet business in that regard?
Yeah, it's always been the case that, our most cherished customers are the ones that take full advantage of our product across all that we have to offer. And Steve, the scenario that you pointed to is one that we see play out in practice, right? Where casino can fill some of those natural voids that exist in the sports calendar. But what we've found is that cross-pollination between sports and casino tends to concentrate itself in a certain subset of categories of games. It tends to customers tend to kind of cross from sports into table games and games of skill. What's been interesting is that over the last number of years, as we've increased our offering on the slot side of the business, that we've seen customers come and choose PointsBet first from a casino perspective. And that's a new segment that we're embracing, and one that we think can also be a secondary growth driver for us as we think about this casino category. So we have the journey that involves people coming to us for sports and finding our casino experience, and then looking at it holistically and saying, well, that's a great brand, that's a great operator to be partnered with. And then we have those that are finding us as a casino first customer, and where it's our job to introduce them to the sports side of the business, where that's of interest.
Colin, is there a role for Bede Gaming to play when you to Scotty's point, where you are, PointsBet isn't only an online casino operator, it's offering sportsbook as well. Like what role, if any, does Bede Gaming play in that?
I think just reflecting on what Scotty's explaining there, in both those instances, Bede is we're the provider there for all of the casino game content that's very broad category now at PointsBet, but also all the engagement tools underneath it. And Scotty started to mention those, but it's the tools around, you'll see them at a headline level as things like free spins, as things like the progressive jackpots, any tie-in with PointsBet's loyalty program that's triggered from the casino games themselves. And then, the deeper automation that sits behind delivering that part of the experience to the player. So Bede, we're not directly involved in the provision of the sports side of things, Steve. But when you go under the hood to the actual player experience that sits outside of the content, Bede's going to be woven together with PointsBet's own platform and PointsBet's CRM solutions. They help deliver that experience to the player. So it's a careful weaving of capabilities to deliver what Scotty explained to be the player experiences that matter around those key moments in the player journeys. Whether that be around a live sport event, or whether it's about PointsBet being an ultimately highly competitive operator in what could otherwise be a direct casino experience. So yeah, the breadth of experience really important to help PointsBet acquire and retain players.
Yeah, Steve, just on that point, and to just sort of highlight something that Colin was alluding to, for us, part of our selection of a partner was finding someone who was willing to provide the services that we wanted. And in our case, it was important for us, for a number of strategic reasons, to hold on to control of our PAM and to that player account management capability, making sure that it could be seamless across both the sportsbook and the casino part of our business, which meant that we needed the aggregation capabilities, the bonusing capabilities, and stuff that came with the platform. But we weren't just buying an off-the-shelf, fully packaged solution that included the PAM and stuff. So the technical requirement on Colin and his team to be able to integrate with our platform and to be able to kind of tie in cleanly to our wallets and stuff like that presented an additional challenge to Bede through this process, which they handled extraordinarily well.
Hey, I want to stick with the player for a couple more minutes, and Scotty, I'll start with you here, and then Colin can jump in. But that's just on player protection, and player protection seems to be a phrase that comes up more and more these days. And again, this podcast, we're recording this interview about 9 days before the opening day of the SBC Summit Canada. But I just wonder, Scotty, like where does player protection fit within this partnership?
Well, there's two things I would say. One is, PointsBet is and has been and remains committed to responsible operations, a good RG program, and player protection. We're excited with the launch of the centralized self-exclusion registry later this week, and that we'll look forward to that being a further enhancement of guardrails around individual participation in this category. So that's kind of part one. And because we think about our players holistically, that's partially why it's important for us to hold on to the PAM and those aspects of the control of our operating system. What we get from Bede, and I opened with this comment at the beginning of our conversation, is just they, on the casino side, they have an incredible amount of built-in expertise around player journeys, player play behavior, early indicators, those types of things that we would otherwise have to kind of learn on our own. So for me, part of the opportunity is as we move from launch to more fulsome operations, that we are taking full advantage of the knowledge and expertise that the Bede team brings to the table around the casino side more specifically.
Colin, your thoughts?
Yeah, Steve, I'd only add to that really. Recognise what Scotty just said around the expertise. We've been, Bede first went live, over 12, 13 years ago now in the UK market. And the UK market's obviously quite a mature market in the respect of player safety and responsible gambling. So we've got that in our expertise, and the team has grown with that. We're also live in other markets like Germany. So Germany's got a highly sort of regulated and very strict taxation approach, which actually has resulted in a lack of channelization. And if you compare that to where we're at in Ontario, which has been a very successful market in terms of channelization, and also maturing very quickly in terms of how the operators are, I guess, moving away from like static compliance tooling, like fixed deposit limits and fixed time of withdrawals and things like that, to something where operators have to stand there now and really defend that the tooling that they're implementing is able to interact with players and help make the experience safer. So it's not just having the tools; you actually have to demonstrate that you're using them to the player's benefit. So Bede has got all of that experience sort of baked in, and working with our partners, we can sort of leverage that across the different markets that we're active in and bring to bear actual real lived experience. So we've got all the tooling, we provide all the data, then we add to that our sort of partnership approach in terms of this is how to use it. And Scotty's got a good team there in terms of the culture around safer gambling, and then how the tools are embraced and then their own ideas about how to bring that forward to the players in the right way at the right time. That's a really effective mix. That's the only thing I'd probably add to what Scotty's saying. There's a lot of background there.
Hey, Scotty, just on that too, and I think, maybe get you to put on your CGA hoodie for a second here, is that, we talk about responsible gambling a lot. We talk about advertising, we talk about messaging, kind of that external communication. And I think sometimes it gets lost, and I might even be guilty of this myself with how we cover things in the newsletter. But it's a good time to remind people that there are a lot of safeguards once you're a customer with an operator such as PointsBet, correct?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like PointsBet, but let me put my CGA hat on.
Yep.
If you're a licensed operator operating in Ontario, then historically you've built safeguards into your site. So it would be a fallacy to suggest that players don't have tools at their disposal to be able to limit their play or make choices around their engagement with the site at the time when they're not in the heat of the moment, where they're kind of have a calmer minds or whatever you want to kind of say around the condition that they would be making those choices. What's not been the case, or what has been one of the challenges without having a centralized repository for exclusions or play management, is that people can make that choice in one environment and then decide to go to a different environment and make a different set of choices. And so players can do themselves a disservice in how they move through the various different competitors in the industry, and each competitor has to kind of relearn the characteristics of that player. So we're moving towards better information. We're moving towards a set of controls that will improve the safety of this industry. But that's not because responsible participants haven't always had RG at the front and center of their mindset. So the reality is, we know that for this to be a business that has longevity and stability, and that can be a legitimate entertainment category alongside other forms of recreation, it needs to be one that people, where the harm to individuals is limited, and where controls are in place, and where people can participate in a safe and responsible way, and take advantage of the enjoyment and the incredible excitement that comes from live wagering, without necessarily putting themselves in harm.
Colin, when you and I spoke in the past, you mentioned that Bede Gaming operates exclusively in regulated markets, and I'm thinking that your decision to join the Canadian Gaming Association, that's just a reinforcement of your commitment to working with partners in those types of markets.
Yeah, I guess, Steve, it's probably been a bit of an oversight at Bede not to have joined earlier, actually. And Scotty's just laid out very eloquently why you would seek to join if you're an organisation like Bede's. Sort of what the association advocates for is perfectly aligned with where Bede targets as well. And I think that'll just carry on for the long term. And yeah, we want to be, we've now, with PointsBet as well as the Ontario Lottery, we'd like to be better known in the Canadian marketplace. Be ready to support other operators in regulated markets in Canada when the opportunity arises. So why wouldn't you be a member of the CGA? We've probably overlooked it to now, Steve, so we're setting that right.
Hey, Scotty, just quickly, our listeners and viewers may have forgotten that you're under new ownership now, and I just wonder, having new owners in Mixi now, does that give you a little bit more flexibility or give you the ability to do these kinds of partnerships and collaborate with a company like Bede Gaming that can enhance your product and your business? Yeah, so PointsBet in last year was purchased by a Japanese gaming business called Mixi. PointsBet in its Canadian business, as well as our Australian business, were part of that transaction. And what Mixi is bringing to the table is a wonderful level of discipline, a long-range planning. It is absolutely a strength
of Japanese business leadership to be able to think multiple horizons into the future and understand where they want to take a position in a market and how they want to grow that. And so whether it's the Bede specific partnership, which we had been moving on prior to that transaction concluding, or more generally, the strategic choices that we're thinking through as it relates to our footprint here in Canada and Australia globally, having Mixi as a backer and a champion for what we're trying to do is proving early returns, and I expect will only kind of amplify our competitive capabilities over time. Yeah, I think that's what I would say in the moment.
Yeah, guys, I do want to spend a few minutes on Alberta before we wrap up. But before we do that, I've had the two of you together, and both kind of coming from unique places, including geographically. Colin, I'll start with you, and that's just in Ontario now. We're 4 years and I think 1 month into the open market here, and just a couple of thoughts from you on what you've seen with Ontario, maybe how it stacks up with the rest of the world as a regulated jurisdiction, and what you've seen happen over those 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, God, Steve, a lot's happened actually. I started at Bede just over 4 years ago. So I came into Bede around about the time where we had migrated OLG onto our platform, and it had been live, and it was looking at that April when the market opens, what's going to happen. So we'd gone through that whole digital transformation, changed the platform, introduced a new mobile app. I think the rise of online casinos has obviously been a trend in that time. It's expanded hugely. That's probably beyond people's expectations. I think the strength of the market, I look at the strength of the market in terms of channelization, probably, Steve. So the conditions are very strong in Ontario to bring that market into a regulated footing. And everything positive that comes with that. So I know that hasn't been easy. So there's various introduction of restrictions around advertising or around bonusing, or some of the advancements in player protection and things like that, which don't always obviously seem to support that commercial position, but definitely been borne out by that channelization rate and the health of the market and how competitive it is. So it's comparing it to other markets, it's probably one that's developed a lot more rapidly than, say, some of the European markets. So to be 4 years ago and grow as quickly as it did and make some of the changes that it's had to do in that time, really impressive. And hopefully that reads across to Alberta. And I think Alberta's probably being established with some of those learnings already baked in. Definitely things like the self-exclusion system being there at the start is really positive. I look forward to seeing how that evolves. But Ontario's been a really good market for those 4 years, I think, and looks set to continue.
Yeah, Scotty, when I think of take a your time at PointsBet, it's almost crazy, right? I mean, I think it's probably getting close to five years for you now. You gone through an ownership change. You're chair of the Canadian Gaming Association now. You're in a market with almost 50 operators, and again, just your thoughts when you kind of look back at when you first joined PointsBet and where we sit today in terms of Ontario.
Well, Steve, I can still remember the very first time that you and I chatted, where I was on a phone call heading north to a cottage weekend away in Muskoka, and you were hosting a discussion on this category, and one of my co-founders, Nick Solsky, had joined the call and asked me to participate because I was new into the role, and so from that kind of humble beginning, I definitely look back over the last 5 years with an awful lot of fondness for the journey that I've been on, and an immense amount of appreciation for what being in this privileged role has allowed me in terms of learning and education. And I've been very motivated both by the opportunities for PointsBet, but also by the opportunities for this industry as a whole. I absolutely believe that the right answer, not just for Canada, but for jurisdictions around the world, is a safe, regulated gaming environment. I believe that taking this category out of the shadows and putting it into the light, doing that in a way that allows for high channelization so that alternative gray and black market solutions lose their appeal, is absolutely the best way to maximize all outcomes. You obviously have to do that in a way that respects that not everybody that's a member of society is a gambler, and many people will struggle with messages around gambling, and so you have to become better at how you tailor your messaging as an industry. But there's no debate that since Ontario opened, it's produced an immense amount of tax benefit for Ontario. It's changed player outcomes around safety and given more control to players and put more visibility and scrutiny on it. And everybody in this industry has gone along the journey of figuring out how to become better and better at the core job of offering a product, keeping players safe, and ultimately delivering a positive outcome for all. So from my perspective, it's been a joy to guide PointsBet through that journey, even though it's had a number of different chapters, as you rightly say, Steve. And I'm finding through the CGA, I've been a member of the CGA and a member of the board for a number of years now. Now I have a little bit more of a leadership role in the context of the CGA, but that comes with an agenda that we're working towards, which enhances the advocacy for what a regulated framework, what a player-first safety framework can look like across this country.
Colin, in terms of Alberta, we know the market is, barring something crazy happening, the market's going to launch on July 13th. Like, what are the conversations you're having within Bede these days, and with either existing and or potential customers around that market?
Steve, we're evaluating how different it is to other markets, essentially, and what do we need to ready ourselves to be in the market. Bede's very well prepared, actually. There's obviously a lot of similarities with the framework in Ontario. Bede has already got the necessary certifications, the SOC standards being probably the notable one there, and sort of eagerly anticipating what we need to do to introduce the Alberta version of BetGuard. Outside of that, I probably wouldn't make the assumption that Alberta would be the same as Ontario in terms of player behaviour and player preferences and things like that. Yes, probably. I've seen it before in other markets where can be a lazy assumption, and you could get even lazier by saying that Alberta's so close to Ontario that why wouldn't it be exactly the same? But we stay alert, and if we need to adjust anything or change or prominence to one thing over another, they're the sort of things we're looking out for. We're looking forward to being at SBC next week and meeting any potential customers who would want to enter Alberta with a solution as our own. So we've already got quite a busy few days lined up there with that as a key topic. Obviously with Scotty and the team looking at how we do that as well, and hopefully that will be first for us. And that's another chance to be with the PointsBet team next week, which is great. Just open really, Steve. It's not easy sort of winning new business as a PAM or as an aggregation partner for operators, and it'll be a very competitive market. Probably lots of operators going into that market with the solutions they have today in Ontario and elsewhere. So we're not naive about how competitive it is, and hopefully discussing with Scotty on here our approach and how we work might enlighten a few more to come and have a chat with us, Steve, and get the right feel for Bede and maybe step forward with us. So thank you for that question.
Hey, Scotty, your thoughts on that? It's funny. Colin mentioned kind of Alberta being a unique market, and I look over your shoulders and I see the Toronto Raptors logo and the Maple Leaf logo and the Toronto SC logo, and so I think it's a great question to ask, and part of that question is how important is it to recognize the fact that Alberta is a different market than Ontario?
Yeah, obviously, sometimes people from Ontario can make the mistake of thinking that it's more similar than it is, but if you spend time in Alberta and ask the question in reverse, it's quite obvious that there's fierce level of independence and perspective from all Albertans. The reality for us at PointsBet is we do think that we can build on all of the strengths and capabilities that we've put in place in Ontario and extend many of those into Alberta. Colin's right. There are a few nuances with the launch of Alberta that are requiring us to do some work on our side. The compliance, particularly the SOC 2 compliance sort of attestation and audit work, a little bit of work around data separation and making sure that we can adhere to the standards that Alberta set forth for privacy and those things. And so we're coupling up that alongside our view of when do we think the commercial opportunity exists in Alberta, and trying to kind of marry that up into our plan as it relates to how it is that we think about our entry into the Alberta market. We've obviously got a lot going on here in Ontario, and so we're trying to kind of marry all those pieces together.
Hey, I want to finish and this question, and thanks to both Pat Eichner from PointsBet and Andrea Pierce from Bede Gaming with helping with this podcast. But Andrea has sent me this question, Colin. I think it's a really good one. I'm going to ask it for both of you. And the question is, quote, if we look back 3 years from now, what is the one thing this partnership will have achieved that would have been impossible if you'd both gone it alone?
Oof, good question, Andrea. Or was it from PointsBet?
that was it. That was Andrea.
Yeah, I mean, easy get out for me on this first part of the question. We wouldn't do anything on our own. We'd have a platform and a great product that wouldn't be available. So it has to be in partnership. I guess what would I say immediately about that? It's great for Bede to have a breadth of partners. Yeah, so we've got 5 partners operating in different jurisdictions, and obviously Ontario is our first where we have multiple operators in the same market. And I think what we're getting there is a sort of broader understanding of different demand, different demographic of customer, different behaviour. Ultimately, it really strengthens our product. So I think what we'll look back on in 3 years' time is probably a position where Ontario and hopefully Alberta are enjoying what might be our strongest product, because it's based on the sort of broadest feedback from both the customer and operator demand perspective.
Scotty, give the last word to you.
When PointsBet started, obviously our business started in Australia, and we developed very strong businesses in horse racing and in sports. And for a number of years, as I've highlighted at different points in this conversation, we've been incubating and trying to grow our casino business. 3 years from now, my aspiration is that when you look at PointsBet as a whole company, there are 3 very strong legs to our stool. That we have a very strong and well-established, very engaging horse racing product, a wonderful sports product that it allows players in-game entertainment, and a casino product that's world-class. And so what I know from having been on this journey over the last number of years is that our pathway to a world-class casino product requires that we partner with the best. And I absolutely believe through this partnership with Bede that we found the best. We found a partner that will accelerate our footprint in Canada, but will be there for us as we build that third leg of the stool more holistically against PointsBet's aspirations. So that's my thoughts on where we'll be together as we look forward.
I can see your face up on a billboard, Scotty, with that quote with Colin with Bede Gaming paying the freight for that. I'll look forward to seeing that when I'm driving on the Gardner down to Toronto next week.
Colin will do that, and I'll give him a CGA hoodie.
That sounds like a deal, Colin.
That's
I'm up for that.
Great commercial. That's a great commercial.
That is Scotty Vanderwel, the Chief Executive Officer of PointsBet Canada. Colin Cole-Johnson is CEO of Bede Gaming. Hey guys, thanks so much for doing this. Excited to see how this partnership moves forward, and I have a feeling we'll have you both on and we'll do this podcast again. I mean, maybe we won't wait 3 years to do that.
Perfect. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks, Scotty. Thanks, Steve. See you next week. Yeah.
Great. That's it for this episode of the Gaming News Canada show presented by Bede Gaming. You can listen to this show on all of the podcast apps. You can also watch my conversation with Scotty and Colin on the Gaming News Canada YouTube channel. Again, thanks to both Scotty and Colin for joining us today, and we will see everybody again very soon.